Hi guys, in this video I would like to show you how to make your Go apps configurable. This is going to apply to APIs, microservices and stuff like that. So I prepared a small app that connects to a database that's running on my machine. So I have it running here in Docker, which is Postgres 18, and my app just connects to this database and gets the users from there and outputs them into the console. Now as you can see, if I run it, this is what it looks like. Only one user is there, nothing special. This must list users function is being called, and it iterates over the users and it outputs the users to the console. And then we have this init function that initializes the connection into this DB variable. So this is how it's configured at the moment, and this is not how you should do it, because the credentials are hard-coded here, which means when you deploy this app, your database URL will be different. For example, it's going to be some private IP address, something like that, and then you're going to have some strong password, and then you're going to have, I don't know, some different username and so on. So you want to make it configurable, and the first step to making it configurable actually is by reading these values from your environment variables. You can do it like this. So you can define a user, os get env, os get env, and then you can say db user, and then you can do the same for password, host, and db name, and then you can insert these values here. And now my app is not gonna run, but when I specify the values like this, so I'm gonna specify db user postgres, export db host localhost, export db password postgres, export db name postgres. Then if I run it again, as you can see, it's running. But to be honest, this is not ideal, because you actually might want to pass numbers to your configuration. And for example, as you can see here, I want the port to be a number, but the port is actually a string, and then I have to do some parsing, like port number is something like this, and then I have to handle this error and stuff like that, which is again not ideal. And then there are other cases, like let's say API keys, and I want to have multiple API keys separated by comma, something like this, and then I have to also kind of parse it in using my own algorithms. So I then can, for example, API key string, and then I can say API keys, and then I can just split them. But again, this is not ideal. So what I like to do is actually, instead of using this getEnv function, what I like to do is actually use another package for this, which is called I think I have it here installed, exactly, env parse I think it's called, and then it accepts a pointer to a struct, and then it populates this struct based on its tags with the environment variables. Let me show you what it looks like. So first of all, we need to define the struct with our configuration. I'm going to do it like this, type config struct, and then what I can do here is actually say db user, and then it's gonna look like this. I'm gonna get rid of these default values. Exactly, so here I have this config, which is my kind of schema for the configuration, and now I can actually load all the environment variables using just one statement into this configuration. So let me just create an object of this class or of this struct, and then I can load it like this. So, and then I can handle the error. So let's just print it out for now and see if it's populated. And then let's also specify like this. And then as you can see, config loaded Postgres, localhost Postgres, which are exactly the variables that I specified here. So if I do echo db host, it outputs these variables, db user, and so on. So which means this config is actually populated with my environment variables, which is exactly what I wanted. And then what you can also do with this package is you can create nested structs, and I think this is much better actually. So here I'm going to define user, and let me just actually move these to here, and then I'm gonna say like this, and then we're gonna say env prefix, I think it's called, db, and then I should get rid of this prefix here. And this is actually the equivalent of what we did before. So if I run it again, yeah, okay, I need to provide these values properly here, db user, like this. And then as you can see, it works exactly the same way. So this is the big advantage of this package, that you can kind of separate all the different things that your app requires. It can also handle numbers. For example, let's say I want to provide a port, and now if I run it again, I think I provided it here, exactly 5432, and it's loaded here. But in this case, you can be sure it's already a number. So if I check this variable, it is a number, integer, which is great. And now just another quick tip how to handle environment variables locally, because let's say you want to deploy this app somewhere, and when you deploy this app, you probably will dockerize it, and it's going to be running in some environment as a Docker container. And in this environment, you basically would provide environment variables like this, env, and then foo equals to bar, and then you would run your container. So this is how you run Docker containers, and this is how you provide environment variables to them. But when you run apps locally, it's not really convenient to do export and export all your variables one by one all the time. So what you can do instead is actually use another package. I think I have it installed already as well, go.env, and do load. And here you can specify from where you would like to load your environment variables. By default, it's going to load environment variables from this .env file. I already prepared it here. So if I do here db port, it's going to be exactly the same. And it returns an error, so I can handle it if I want as well. And now if I create a completely new terminal where I don't have these variables defined already, as you can see, db port is empty, db host is empty, I can still run the program, and it's gonna load properly because I have these variables defined in this .env file. One thing though, I don't really recommend to handle this specific error. I like to do it like this because, again, in, let's say, cloud environments, when you deploy your app as a Docker container, you don't want this environment variables to be there specified as a .env file. So basically you would have it docker ignore. So you would have it in docker ignore, and then you'd have it also in git ignore. So this .env file shouldn't end up in your Docker containers. It shouldn't end up in your production environment. This is really just for your development environment. So thanks a lot for watching. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel. This would mean the world to me. Thank you so much.